Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome, folks. Today, the Hungry Gamer is back with another episode of Boards and Brews, and today I am joined by the men, the myths, the legends, the second string, I guess, of Solosaurus, Martin Gonzalez and Michael Eckenfels, who, I kid, they now have taken over Solosaurus, a solo gamer only podcast. Why they're talking to me, because I play games that aren't solo, I don't know, but here they are. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. And
Hello.
The first thing we have to do, because this is Boards and Brews, what brewed beverage do you have with you? And everyone listening or watching, it is 9:30 in the morning. So you can judge people based on what beverages they hold up right now. So for me,
All right.
I have a coffee. I think it's a relatively local company called Counterculture is the brew that I have in my Omicron Protocol swag mug.
Ooh, wow. Michael, why don't you go ahead while I pull up a website?
Well, I've been up since 5 a.m., so I've been up for 4.5 hours. I've already drank my coffee. It was Costco Donut Shop, Keurig. Awesome. I've got Kirkland Alkaline Water right here. I got my second vaccine yesterday, so I've got something of a headache going on. I think I'm good with the coffee right now. I feel a lot better.
Michael, you knew we were going to be appearing on a video podcast called Boards and Brews. You had one job, Michael. One job.
I got plenty of brews in the fridge.
But that's okay, Martin, because we're going to get to your one job that you had a little bit later.
Oh, oh my gosh. All right. First of all, I did my research on this content, your show, and I listened to about 20 minutes of the previous episode, and so I feel a little bit, kind of cheated because we're not recording this at a reasonable hour where I could be holding some, snooty hipster craft beer. This is Intelligentsia Black Cat Classic Espresso Coffee. I believe this is a coffee shop. They're an outfit based in Chicago, if I'm not horribly mistaken. And that's kind of my go-to in this mug, this apple care mug.
And all of us watching, we know you're drinking beer out of that. You just don't want us to know.
Yeah. What's that brewery up in? Oh no, I'm gonna have to look it up now. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
Is this what happens, Michael? You say something and he goes down a rabbit hole of internet research in the middle of recording? Is that what happens?
He's usually pretty good about keeping on topic. I mean, I'm usually the one that goes off, and he's the one who keeps us straight. So,
so you're saying that we're in trouble if he's already.
We're all in trouble. We're always in trouble.
Pretty much in. That's all right though.
All right. Well, I'll jump in. I'll let Michael start with the rapid fire questions here. And hopefully by the time he's done, Martin will have rejoined us. So these are the questions we always ask. Who the crap are you? What is your channel? What is your shtick? And how and why did you get started reviewing games?
Uh-oh. Wow, that's a long story. I've been playing board games since 1977 or so. My first one I ever bought was when I was 8 years old back then. So it's been a while. I've been in the reviewing games since about 2002. Mostly war games, strategy games, that kind of a thing. Got into solo games pretty early on in the mid-'80s when they started really making them. But at the time, those were mostly war games, of course. The board game market didn't really blow up until, mid-'90s, late 90s, something like that. But I still, just as a matter of situation, had been playing games solo because, back in the 80s, there's no internet. How do you find people that want to play these games? It was hard. So I learned to be schizophrenic, of course, to play multiplayer games, both sided or multi-handed, as they say. So once I got into about 2002, starting reviews, I really kind of took off there and started doing more than that. I started doing computer game manuals. I did a board game manual for Age of Mythology board game. That's my big star. That was like 2005. So I'm helping out on some other projects right now, though, across a few Kickstarters. So that's fun. I like to keep busy doing that kind of thing. But ultimately, Solosaurus, of course, is where we're at now, where I am co-hosting with the indomitable Martin G. Of course, we had been talking for probably about a year, Martin. I think before that to do a podcast, and we just never landed on anything because just time and scheduling and that kind of thing. And then this whole thing started when Brandon reached out to Martin saying, "Hey, would you take this over for us?" And he said, "Yeah, of course." And then he thought of me and contacted me, and that's how we got going with that. So it's funny you say second stringers because it is true. I mean, I listened to a lot of their podcasts once this came up, and I was like, "Yeah, these guys are really good." So hopefully we can hold a candle to it. And so far, so good, I think. So,
But the second string, when the old stars get old, they're just not as good anymore. And you got to bring the rookies in. They got to get their playing time.
yeah, well, I'm way too old to be a rookie. So,
Anybody watching, I'm not bashing on the old guys. They actually have a great podcast. I'm just giving Michael and Martin a hard time.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah,
I just didn't want your legions of fans to be like, how dare he make fun of our people?
No, if you didn't, I'd wonder. It's part of the shtick. I mean, it's all right. We have that sense of humor, so it's perfectly fine.
So what is the shtick though for Solosaurus?
Well, that's a good question.
We talk about one game,
right.
solo game per episode.
Right. That discussion sometimes goes into other games, and I try to keep track of that when I'm producing the podcast, and I usually miss out on some. But sometimes you look in those show notes, you'll see a dozen games listed because we mentioned it during our discussion. But yeah, the focus is just one. Yeah.
And we try to go super deep. And that's carrying on the tradition of Brandon and Carter, who started the show 3 years ago now, almost 3 years ago now. And as Michael mentioned, yeah, so Brandon Waite reached out to me on Facebook Messenger. And, we just kind of I was a fan because I was listening. Solosaurus was the only kind of solo-centric podcast that I would listen to when I wasn't hosting it yet. And I didn't know that hosting it was in my future or co-hosting it, right? And then Brandon reaches out of nowhere on Facebook Messenger and says, "Hey, life's changing. Carter's situation is changing. They're having a kid. And would you be interested in taking this on?" He goes, he thought about it, and he figured that there would be no one else that he could think of who would be, which was both, I mean, I felt like it was an out-of-body experience, right? It's like, here's Brandon. I've listened to his voice so many times. And the thing about what separated the Brandon and Carter incarnation of Solosaurus was that they would go super deep on an episode, and then you would actually learn things. And there's a whole bunch of content out there that's super wide and mentions a lot of stuff, but doesn't go deep. You know what I mean? And so that was, anyway. Here I am branching off in like 10 different tangents at once, but I was super honored.
It's okay. You're going deep. You're going deep.
I was super honored that he would even think of me. And then it was a serendipity because, as Michael mentioned again, I've been kicking around this, we should do a podcast together, whatever. And again, Michael and I had just kind of met through, board gaming, social media, whatever. I haven't been a board gamer. I started in late 2017. It was actually my oldest son who sucked me in. It was Eldritch Horror. That was my kind of gateway game, if you will. And that kind of connected to when I was still in college, and I had a regular group, and we would play a lot of the old Chaosium Call of Cthulhu games, Masks of Nyarlathotep, whatever, And the 1920s kind of like Cthulhu investigator milieu, that's still my baseline, my favorite, kind of time or whatever milieu in gaming. So anyway, Michael and I were off and running, and Brandon basically handed us all the keys to everything Solosaurus and all the graphics and all the passwords. And he's like, "Here, and then we kind of picked up where we well.
And were you able to hear the car tires squealing as he peeled out and drove away saying, "Suckers!"
Yes. Yeah. We actually had two kind of transitional episodes where Carter couldn't make the episode where they reviewed Arkham Horror LCG, the card game, and I had famously at that time kind of had a thing where I'd had a love-hate relationship with that game. I'd actually done a video where I'd left it on the sidewalk. Whatever, it was a thing. And so it was me and Brandon, and we kind of reviewed that game. And then the following episode was this mega episode where it was Brandon and Carter, kind of the old guard, and then Martin and Michael, the new guard, and we reviewed Mage Knight. And 3 out of the 4 of us hated it. So that one caused a stir. And then Brandon was like saying that Mage Knight is one of his all-time favorite games. So there you have it. And then after that, it was just me and Michael.
Never spoken again.
Yeah. Brandon revealed something to me during this process. He keeps his collection, his game collection, solo game collection, down to about, I think the number is 28 games. Very disciplined, and he got obviously a very, very kind of detailed and profound thinking behind, like, why does this game deserve to be in my collection versus. Meanwhile, I look at the 300 plus behind me and I'm like, no, so yeah.
And the question is, how many games have you bought since we've been recording?
I mean, that's what I'm doing in these other browser tabs, on Amazon here and Game Nerds over here. I mean, it's the deal of the day. You're actually, this is interrupting my game deal mojo right now.
Sorry, Miniature Market. Boards and Brews, not brought to you by anybody who sells games. I did actually, I reached out to my favorite local brewery, and when I'm usually if it's not in the morning or, early enough that I'm drinking coffee, just to see. And I put it in the email. I didn't ask for money. I was like, you just want to send me some of the beer, and I put it in the email. As I wrote it, I said, now that you're done laughing, I'd like you to actually consider this. And they were like, yeah, we're not. They're like, oh, no, we're not doing that, pandemic stuff. And I was like, so you're saying to email you again when everyone's vaccinated? Gotcha. But let's actually jump into the beginning of the actual podcast here, which is to start out with, what have you been playing recently and what's on your table right now? And that can be a different thing. Let's start with you, Michael.
Well, I did play Heroes of Tenefyr. How do you say that?
I think it's Tenefyr, but I don't know.
What? Okay, you guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I actually did play it last night, thanks to Martin sending me his print and play copy through the mail. Fortunately, I appreciate that, Martin. That's really good quality stuff, man, and it makes me go, I need to print and play, which I never do. My own components to it, to flesh it out. But anyway, so I did play that. I wrote it down. There we go. So I do have Australia back on the table as well, because
that's the zombie game, the Martin Wallace zombie game.
Oh gosh, Martin.
Yes.
Oh, did I just open a can?
No. I see. It's funny because Martin mentioned this game to me months ago, right? And it's on our. Well, I guess it's okay to say it's on our plate to review for Solosaurus, and I didn't know anything about it. So just looking at the title, that's the first thing I thought of too. It's a zombie game because it's got a big capital Z in it. So it's got to be zombie related. And Martin said, oh, no. So I looked at it. I'm like, oh, it's Cthulhu. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. And then there's this big thing. It's really a fascinating game, actually. It's something I totally had no idea about. And jumping into it has actually been quite enjoyable. So I've done that.
I told you so.
Yeah, see? But that was funny when he said, oh, Michael, no, it doesn't have anything to do with zombies. What are you saying?
But there's a big Z in the middle. So I think,
right,
I think Martin must be wrong. There's got to be zombies in there somewhere.
There's got to be, yeah. I mean,
probably monsters.
If you want to conflate extra dimensional, creatures who follow non-Euclidean geometry with zombies, then I guess yes.
I'm sorry. Could you push your glasses up your nose while you say that, please?
And by the way, I have that in mint condition, which is funny because it's Michael who does the voices. I don't do those voices.
Cthulhu that we want to talk about here. It's not in my Dungeons and Dragons book, though. But it's in my Pathfinder book on page 232, section 4.
I thought it was in the monster manual.
That's page 237.
237.
So,
Well,
I mean,
I think you have
unless
the.
you have the third edition book.
That's right. I think you got the third edition. You don't have the fourth edition, which was downloaded. Yeah.
Oh boy!
I can go for
Here we go.
Alright.
Here we go. That's
Anyway.
so that was officially the moment when this podcast, this content went off the rails.
I mean, luckily, not that many people watch. So it's okay.
Okay. Shoot.
I mean, which is a shame because that was Michael's best stuff. That was his best material.
He's really good.
I'm done. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
That's it. Drop the mic.
Mark, what have you been playing, and what do you have on your table right now?
All right. So what I literally have on my table right this second is a Harry Potter House Cup tournament worker placement game. Yes, absolutely. I am a huge Harry Potter fan / nerd. And I bought this game. First of all, I didn't know, like, the only halfway decent Harry Potter game I've ever played is Hogwarts Battle, the deck building game. And that's fine. And it's actually the most played game of my family, because the whole family grew up on Harry Potter and this and that. And it's an okay deck builder. Okay, whatever. And I just thought, that's it. There's no other, like, everything else is garbage. And then literally last week, I found out that the OP, whatever USopoly became.
Used to be USAopoly. Now,
right?
That's what I'm doing my best, Eric Summerer from Dice Tower. From the OP, formerly known as USAopoly.
and they put out a worker placement game in the Harry Potter universe, and I took a look at it, and it's, the reviews were lukewarm, but hey, it was Harry Potter, so I bought it. I bought from Amazon Warehouse, so it came, and Amazon Warehouse, they'll tell you it might have some type of cosmetic damage. Well, this one had a huge just gouge in the side of the box that had gone through and nearly destroyed the rule book, and then bent the game board. But it, everything was still in there, and I got a deal on it. I got about $10 off on it. And
utterly destroyed game, $10 off.
$10 off. Hey, anything for a deal. And it's not a great, like, the components are garbage. I mean, literally, for a worker placement game, you have these tiny flat discs, and they have a little, like, tiny picture of the student, Harry Potter, Hermione, whatever. And I'm like, oh, no, this won't do. And so I almost instantly made, print and played proper standees for all of them, put plastic bases on all of them. And now it feels like a more proper, like a proper worker placement game. And I'm playing it. It doesn't even have a solo mode, but I'm playing two-handed, and I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. Told my family about it. My relatives in upstate New York, and they're like, yeah, send. And I said, I'll even make standees for you so that you have a better experience. They're like, yeah. So that's what's on my table right this second. I'm also making my print and play copy of Genotype, which is from, what is this, Genius Games, I believe. I forget who the designer is. If only there was some sort of central website where we could look this stuff up.
Yeah, some sort of central website that was on your shirt right now. For people who are just listening, Martin is shilling for BGG hard right now.
But yeah, Genotype is I believe it's also a worker placement game about Mendelian genetics, traits, and how these get passed on through generations and all that stuff. And I find that fascinating. And I hope to have a working print and play copy by about 2:00 this afternoon.
And also, anybody who doesn't know, but Martin is slightly obsessed with doing print and plays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done about 150 of them.
And they're not like print and plays like I do every now and then. I'll do some stuff. It's not like us normies print and play stuff. It's sometimes better quality looking stuff than you get out of the actual box, like real cardstock and real printers and lamination, and I don't know, probably blood of orphans in there somewhere too to really make them pop.
I mean, you get the best meeples from compressed blood of orphan. Absolutely.
Well, there you go.
You think I'm joking?
We just took a dark turn, didn't we? Which I can only feel like must be Michael's fault.
Yeah.
So for myself, I've been playing Hadrian's Wall
Mm.
like
So
crazy
is
lately.
that a roll and write, but very detailed?
It's a flip and write, but it's heavier than any blank and write style game that I've played
Hmm.
because it's you get your resources like a Euro game, and then you know use the resources to allow you to scratch other or color in little boxes. But it turns into this. Sometimes it feels like you have this perpetual motion machine because you're using this resource to fill in this box, but of course that's by filling in that box, that's going to give you another resource, and then you take that to use it over here, and you use that over, and so you start out each turn. Maybe you have 8 resources, the different colored meeples, or they're like workers and soldiers and citizens and whatever, and stone, lots of stone. But then by the end of the turn, you may have had 20 that you've collected and used throughout the entire turn. It is. I don't particularly like roll and write or blank and write type stuff a lot. I don't really care about it. I have a review coming out this week of Merchants of Magic from Rock Manor Games, which is pretty fun. But I was like, okay, I will play this occasionally, and I enjoy it, and it was a good review. But I am quasi addicted to Hadrian's Wall. Like it is just, and I'm terrible at it. I'm so bad. It has like the scoring meter that you get, 0 to 40, you're a schlub. 80 and above, you are Martin G. Like whatever it may be. And I can't get past like 50. I'm just terrible. But every time I play, I'm like, this is the game. This is the time. I got it. Like the other day at lunchtime, because I'm teaching most of the week from home. It's like we're doing now. And so lunchtime, I was like, I could eat lunch, or I could play a round of Hadrian's Wall. I was like, get out of here, food. I don't need you. So I'm super addicted to that right now. Really, really enjoying that. It's just probably I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna say it's probably the heaviest something and right game out there because there's just so much going on, which makes it really, really cool. So there's that. And then on my table right now, it's not actually out yet. It's getting set up as soon as we're done because I'm using the table to talk to you guys. Is Dungeons of Infinity. I've been working on that was a small Kickstarter. They barely funded, took like 2 years to deliver, and so they sent me a review copy, and I kind of feel bad because it just got some solid buzz in the dungeon crawl community and adventure game community, and it's already sold out. Like it sold out all the extra copies in like 2 days or something. So here I have this review copy I'm working on. I'm like, well, not really. It's not completely useless for you to sell some games, but okay. It's a kind of an odd in between style game because you're putting your tiles out and you're kind of sending your heroes around through the dungeon, and that in itself leads you to think it's maybe a heavier game because you got a bunch of different stats you're tracking, and your abilities are going to boost this, and you're going to play this card, it's going to let you use this ability, but you have to roll this number on the 20-sided dice. That lets you think it's a little more complex. You got to roll under this number on this for this ability, and all these different things you're tracking. But then you get into combat and you just put out a couple cards, and there's no like tactical combat really, but there is tactical combat because you lay the cards out in a grid. People who are listening, I'm waving my hands all over the place like an idiot, and Martin's totally getting it. And so there's this positional combat that you do, but it's at the same time as being heavy because you're doing strategic positional combat is very light because you just have cards out there, you're not moving anything. So it's this very kind of odd mishmash of odd sounds negative. I'm not negative on the game at all, but it's this odd kind of mishmash of heavy dungeon crawl and super light dungeon crawl. And so I'm trying to get through. It has an interesting campaign mode where it's, I don't know, 10 chapters you play through, but each chapter is focused on a different character. So if you play through the whole campaign, you will then have played all of the characters, which is a different take than most dungeon crawls because usually, you do a dungeon crawl, you pick your characters and you're going to go through, and sometimes you have some that you just kind of leave in the box and you never bring out. So it's an interesting thing. So I'm hoping to kind of get through that, and hopefully it'll be as fantastic as Martin thinks Harry Potter stuff is.
So this is going to come right out of left field, and you would have never thought that I would mention this, but have you ever played Aliens? What is that one? What is the title of
Another Glorious Day in the Core?
Yes, Another Glorious Day in the. Have you played that one?
I have not because, and now Martin's kind of close. He might be able to come hit me. I don't really like aliens that much.
Oh, Okay.
Now, I
Where's the
don't dislike now. But hold on,
leave the
hold on.
Zoom conference button? Where's that?
Before you get angry, Now, I don't dislike aliens, but for me, I don't. I mean, sci-fi is second behind fantasy stuff for me. It just is. It doesn't excite me as much. It's very hard for me to get excited about a game based on an IP because I already know what happens, and I get angry. Not angry. I get snippy if like we're playing through Aliens Another Glorious Day in the Core. I know these people are supposed to be dead by now. They died because the lieutenant was horrible and sent them in. They're all dead, but nope, they're not dead. And if we're going to win the game, then the Vasquez isn't going to blow herself up in the tunnel because we're amazing and we want. So I don't like that.
Well, actually, I Vasquez blew herself up the last time I played. It was awesome. It was awesome. But anyway, now
she actually could have made it, but the verisimilitude was ruined, and Martin sent her back and just blew her up for nothing.
There is a card in that game called "You Always Were an Asshole," which is one of the greatest cards, and I love that when you actually get to play that card. No, but I asked the question because I'm looking at Dungeons of Infinity. And I'm looking at kind of like the cool. Do you have the cool kind of player board with the slider things on it?
Yeah, and the slider player board it's a neat idea.
Okay.
But and to be fair, like when you first put them in, it's like you feel like you've never felt like you're more pathetic as a physical specimen in your life. You can't get the things to move.
Oh.
But you move them, they loosen up. But they're kind of pokey and sharp. So when I put it back in the box the first time, I actually had got paper towels and layered them in between every board, so it doesn't, scratch it all up and ruin all the text and stuff on there.
Yeah. Well, the only reason I bring it up is because I'm looking at it and I'm like, it reminded me of the setup for Another Glorious Day in the Core, especially when you're talking about, and the combat is, kind of card driven. Although, yeah, the combat in the game is kind of controlled by cards, but there's also a lot of dice rolling resolution. So
yeah, I've watched a couple of playthroughs of Glorious Day in the Core. One of my favorite channels just to watch a playthrough is Meet Me at the Table. Barrett, he also does stuff on One Stop Co-op Shop, and so he did one. So and boy, that you got a challenge on who likes aliens more, you or him. And so he did one. So I was watching it. It does some interesting stuff, like with the way your aim value or whatever. The more you shoot, the worse shot you are, type thing.
Right.
Yeah, it does some neat stuff. Michael, have you played it, or is this just Martin?
Yeah, we reviewed it for Solosaurus in the past episode.
It nearly got the stamp of approval, right? As I recall.
Very close. Yeah, almost.
So now that all the episodes that I've listened to, not a single game has gotten a stamp of approval. Now, to be fair, I haven't listened to all 70 episodes. I think I've listened to five or six. Not a single game has gotten a stamp of approval. What do you have to do to get stomped on here?
Oh boy. Well, Michael, since you and I have been doing this show late last year, we've only handed out the stomp, an unequivocal stomp, once, as I recall. Is that a true statement?
You did on one, and I did not agree. I can't remember what game that was, though. Do you remember?
Was it okay? I gave the stomp to Warp's Edge.
Ah, yes, that's what it was. Yes.
And you didn't like Warp's Edge.
I did not like Warp's Edge.
That's right. I remember that was the first time you and I wildly disagreed on a game, which was fun. Right. Did we review Friday? You and I?
Yes, we did.
I give that's a stomp game for me.
You stomped Friday?
I did. Oh yeah.
Did we? No, that's really sad that I can't remember that. Let me look at
Friday to me is nearly a perfect game design, and we can go down the reasons why I feel that way. But anyway.
I mean, you have played games before, right?
What's that?
You have played games before, right? Friday is perfect.
Yeah. Oh, it's from a design. I think from a game design perspective, I believe it's genius. Yes.
You're absolutely right. I think we did give it a stomp. Actually, I can't find the show notes for that particular episode, but I believe. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, yeah, we did actually. So
yeah, but that's it. So we gave a full stomp to one game. Michael and I in the M&M era, and then a half stomp to Warp's Edge.
Kind of a
That was
tap.
it.
And that's what 15 episodes or so, something like that.
No, we've been about 10-ish
Okay.
so far.
So it's tough. Now, as I'm looking at our notes, because you guys are so lovely and made so many notes, Martin, I see you also have Anachrony on your table.
Yes. That one is just literally sitting in shrink on my table right now.
Now,
Anachrony,
you did make the
yes,
right choice, and you got the exosuits.
I
That's
did.
one of those things that is a cosmetic upgrade. For people who don't know, the workers in Anachrony, they're little cardboard chits.
Mhm.
And it comes with, when you put them in their exosuit and you send them out into the wasteland of, Cupertino or wherever it is, it has a hex tile that you put them on. Or you can get these gigantic stompy mechs, which are huge, and has a slot where you can kind of drop your worker in the top. And it is so delightful to play with those toys. That is pure joy. The only thing that compares that you can cosmetic upgrade for a game that you can pry from my cold dead hands that compares to that are the noise making bases in Dwellings of Elder Vale. They
I
have
haven't played that
monsters
game.
and the legendary edition. So the base editions are standees. The deluxe edition, they have miniatures for the monsters that you can get. The legendary edition, there's bases that you put the monster on, and when you put it down, it roars.
Wow.
That's amazing.
And,
That
and,
is
and
really amazing.
each monster has its own different sounding roar, and like I will fight you before I let you take those from me.
That's amazing. Now, the quick story behind Anachrony is that people have been I've been kind of like slowly dipping my toes into Euro games, and they've been getting kind of crunchier and crunchier, increasing in complexity. And so some folks on social media, Sarah Tippy for one, Doc Hogan, they were like, "You need Anachrony. You need Anachrony." They just kept on going. So I'm like, okay, let me see. And what I didn't know was that Mind Clash Games apparently has like a are we gonna do retail or are we not gonna do retail kind of like back and forth thing going on. So there was one hot second where they had the Essential Edition on Game Nerds, which is one of my favorite stores. They had a deal on it. So I'm like, okay, it's $27 or whatever. I pull the trigger on the Essential Edition. Now, I don't know what other folks think of when they hear the term Essential Edition. To me, Essential Edition is, oh, everything you need is in the box. That might be and it turned out it meant the opposite. Apparently, Essential Edition for Anachrony means the full game is so expensive and so huge and it's got so many things that it's very hard to sell at retail. So we made a stripped down version where we don't have the fun little stompy miniatures, and we just like had these flat discs, and you can play the game but you're not going to. And when I found that out, I'm like, oh man. So then the following day I had to go and I had to like add on another $30 to get the miniatures. And then John Albertson, who works with David Turchi, who was the designer of the game, obviously, on social media, he goes, "And you're going to get Fractures of Time expansion, right? Because you can't just deal with the original Chronobot AI. You have to do the Chronosis, the best version." And I'm like, well, no, I wasn't planning to get the Fractures of Time AI because I thought that's another $30. And then he goes, "Okay, I just talked to so and so at Mind Clash Games. Give them your mailing information. They'll maybe a copy of Fractures of Time." So I'm like, oh my gosh, and that was kind of a cool experience, And so now I have all three of those boxes on, literally just plopped on my table, waiting for me to have the courage, the intestinal fortitude to start learning this very complex game.
And you're just a month or two late, because I actually moved on from my Infinity box. I and you could have had it right down the street. Could have been yours, but instead it's not. Now it's gone. Now it's off in Seattle.
See, you keep saying that, but then you just kind of taunt me with it. You tantalize me with all these things. Here, Martin, you could have had this, but no, you were just a little too late.
Yeah,
It's like
well,
you're
it's interesting. So I've said this a couple times. So the Anachrony is a good game. I mean, it's a lot. You if you get the Infinity box, you're never gonna run out of stuff in that thing. I moved on from it because, as we were talking about before we started, I have a lot of big box games showing up, and as Martin knows, for those who live in California, we don't get a lot of space for whatever money that we have for a house or apartment. It is much smaller than most places. So this game right here, Dwellings of Eldervale, showed up. Hence the other stompy monsters that roar at you, and it retired it for me. I realized I'm not going to play Anachrony that much, and I have almost nothing bad to say about that game. But between Merchant's Cove, which is one of the best Euro games that you will ever play, I think,
Okay.
with a great solo. Oh man, the solo's great. So between that and then Ping Yao, which I got coming later this year, and Dwellings, it's not going to come out that much. And if I'm going to have a box that is, I could fit all my dog and all of Martin's dogs in there and still have space for Michael to climb in too,
Yeah.
I got to be able to pull it out a lot. So it moved on, but they were right. The Chronosis is way better than the Chronobot, and the Stompy Mechs are necessary. And the Fractures in Time, out of all of the different expansions for it, that's the best one. So you now kind of have the essentials. Now, if you can just print and play yourself a box to fit it perfectly, you'll be good.
Well, the one thing I'm really horrible at is doing boxes for my print and play games. So people have actually laughed at them. So I don't think I'll be doing that.
Maybe get a 3D printer and start 3D printing boxes.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
Do you have a
People
3D
are
printer?
also-
Because you need a
I
3D
do
printer.
not.
I need
do not.
organizers printed for my game. So if you could get a 3D printer and start doing that.
So William, not only do you taunt me with games I could have had from you, but now you want me to do work so that you can continue to taunt me.
Yeah. But Michael, you want to get into on the taunting? That's
I know nothing about Anachrony, unfortunately. I've not played it. Martin's the man that gets them. I get the war games tend to, but I've seen it. I've looked at it. It looks pretty cool, but I've not had a chance to play it, so I didn't have anything to offer there. Sorry.
I haven't played it yet either.
So as we talk about Martin making everything, that's kind of leading us into it's just more of a Martin pushed topic for today. We're talking about fan made content, and whether that be player age, whether that be actual game content, whether it be solo modes, all of those kinds of things. So the big question to start with is, what kind of fan made stuff for board games do you partake in? That do you enjoy using? For me, player aids, or preferably when someone has taken 5 pages worth of rules and then condensed it down into one page. It's like, no, this is the essentials, the essential editions for the rule book. Those are usually the things that I'm right to and I'm downloading immediately. How about you,
Martin? You probably have a lot more to say about this than I do.
Okay. So yeah, I am a huge fan. Okay, so Michael and I are both instructional designers in real life, and it looks like all three of us are in the teaching profession in one way or the other, which is awesome. And so we're very.
And let me just
picky.
say, the week's not over. I appreciate you guys because this is Teacher Appreciation Week.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you too. We appreciate you too. So we're super picky about rules, and I am famously very poor at acquiring, how to play a game from most of the rule books that are out there. So I have a lot of opinions about rules. So I do a lot of rules are missing things for me. Like, they should have that one pager and they don't. They should have an icon summary and they don't. They should have this and that. And so I end up making those things if they don't already exist, or if I don't like what's already out there, then I in my conceit, I make my own version. So I've put a whole lot of like rule summaries and one pager. Like I like them to fit on a card. So I'll do a lot of those too. And then I do play mats. I've probably uploaded, I don't know, something like 10 different play mats now. um, custom playmats for different like games like Agent Decker or whatever it is. And I like all of my playmats to have the rules summary and the turn sequence printed on the playmat, because to me that's the ideal situation, since I hate to like have to go and paw through the rules and like, how do I do this thing? Well, it takes me out of the game. If it's right in front of my face on the playmat, then that's a better experience for me. So I've made custom like player aid guides, I've made playmats, and I've made a couple of solo modes. So I did one for, there's a game by Eric Lang, who's apparently, quite a controversial figure nowadays because he's been very outspoken, but I love his designs. I think his designs are very clean, very neat, very straightforward. I love Marvel United, what they do with that. So anyway, he's got a game called Godfather Corleone's Empire, I believe, which is a medium weight worker placement game set in New York City, and you're one of the 5 mafia families, and it's the only game I know where you can actually perform drive-by shootings, and then you take the miniatures of the other families, they're thugs that you shot, and you actually put them in the East River, like they're literally lying down. They sleep with the fishes. This is amazing to me. But it didn't.
I'm going to be able to tell you another one.
Okay, great. But it didn't have a solo mode, so I went and I made one, and this is a thing that actually got a lot of play testing. Like 4 or 5 people like tried it out, and they gave me feedback, and we tightened it up, and it's I'm still very proud of it. And then I made a couple of other ones for which I'm not proud of it all, and are super random and don't work. So I wouldn't consider myself very good at making solo modes, but I do have at least one that I can point to and say I made that and I like it. I'm all about fan-made content, and I'm all about print and play games, and I'm a huge booster and proponent of those types of things. And I think one of your questions was, should publishers and designers promote fan-made content?
Well, hold on. That's later. We got to give Michael a chance to talk.
He'll talk.
I mean, for those of you who are listening, but Michael's not even here anymore. He's just a skeleton.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm an observer.
Yeah.
Don't pay attention.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I really don't have too much to add there. I mean, Martin is the wizard when it comes to that kind of thing. For me, it's, I'm an aficionado of Photoshop. So if I run across a war game or some other game that I really like that I think could stand something a little more visually interesting, I'll do something. Like I did a display map for a game called A Wing and a Prayer that's like a squadron organization sheet, and I made it look like hangars and taxiways and things like that to make it look a little more visually interesting rather than just a blah, here's a line and this is where you put these guys and this is where, I made it a little more interesting, at least to me. Then I did a bomber for America Bomber. Actually, that's on Board Game Geek Files section. That's one game I tried to get sent to you, Martin. It's probably a little easier to play that one than Interceptor Ace, but it's a flying wing bomber that the Germans fortunately never built, and I had a lot of fun putting that together. Lately, there's a game called Healthy Heart Hospital from BGG that I love because I was a paramedic for many years ago, and Scrubs is one of my favorite TV shows of all time, so I started retheming it. And I thought, as I'm doing this, I thought Martin would be proud of me doing this. I actually have a cardstock, but I never finished it. I mean, I did the Photoshops. I've got them up here. I've got all the characters in different different cards, and this is the kind of level that I'm at where I'm happy with what I've done. And I'm like, I'm nowhere near Martin's level. So I'm like, I've made a contribution. I just kind of need to follow through with this one. But I've done a little bit here and there, and it's enjoyable. But actually the act of printing it, that's just resources and time that I just don't take. It's overwhelming. I don't think that the better half would appreciate that either. I wish I had some leeway there. I'd probably buy a 3D printer in a heartbeat, but anyway.
It's the cutting of the cards that I despise so much.
Yeah, I'd probably use scissors. I'd mess it up somehow. But
if only one of us had put some tutorial videos out there where you could do that efficiently. I don't know.
That's a shame no one's done that.
Yeah,
the dogs seem to agree with you.
Yeah, so we kind of naturally shifted into the next part of which have you ever made anything? And I've done very, very little, but my one of my games of the year from last year is a game called Court of Miracles from Lucky Duck Games. And it started out as I made a bot for it. And it started out as the game just is better with at least three. And it's very hard to get three people to play games right now. We're getting there. We're getting there. But, the middle of the pandemic. And so I came up with a bot. I was like, well, that's fast and easy because I like my AI just fast. Like, just go. I don't need a flowchart. Just get it done. And so I came up with one that I thought worked okay. And I went through 4 iterations. But now it's actually to the point to where I've actually played this 5-person game now by myself with 5 different bots. So I'm very happy about it. And what makes me most happy about it is Lucky Duck is actually approved of it. Like, it's not in the game, but supposedly they're going to actually put together like a PDF with like some art and stuff on it at some point, which I thought was the coolest thing I ever heard. But I bring that one up, Martin, because that game, when you get new workers, you take the old ones and you throw them in the send. Like, that's where the dead workers go, because it's about this kind of Dickensian
Nice.
Paris. Just you're all these beggars, and you're trying to area control and stuff, and you can one of the locations you can go to. When you go there, you draw a new worker out of the bag that has different powers than what you started with, and then you pick one that you don't like and you throw it in the send. So,
That's great.
so you might have to, and that game is fantastic. Like, just if you're okay with being a little bit mean, great one for the family. I definitely recommend that. And I'm also been working on a solo mode for Coloma. Now, Coloma has a solo mode that it works by the inimitable David Turtsey. It's not the solo mode that I particularly like. I don't like it because it doesn't feel like the bot that I'm playing is another player. It's a very challenging bot, and it works. And there are people who with different kind of brains than I have that really enjoy it. But for me, it doesn't feel like another player. It's very predictable in what it's going to do. Whereas I like chaos in my games. So I like playing, I like it when someone's going to make a choice that maybe isn't, well, obviously this is the choice because, by keeping me, it keeps you off balance. Kind of has that thing. Because in Coloma, there's a lot of predicting what the other people are going to do, because if more than one person goes to the same space, that action gets worse. It calls it boom or bust. Whatever of the 5 spaces the most people go to, the little thing slides around and you only get half of the actions on there. So part of the game is this idea of, well, I know that Martin needs to go here and I know Michael needs to go here. But of course, Michael and Martin know that I know this, and I know that they know that I know this. So you start kind of getting into that loop, and then invariably people make choices that aren't the obvious right choice because I know that you know, and you know that I know that I know. We're a knowledgeable family here. So let's figure out. And so I've tried to just kind of recreate that. So I'm still working on it. I actually was able to get into the hands of the designer of the game, and he's kind of looking at it. He gave me some ideas.
That's
But
awesome.
for me, it's a lot of work, and I only want to do that if I really, really like the game. Like, and if I think I can do it, because I would make one for the game Guildmaster, another Euro game, which is great in a heartbeat, but I am not smart enough to figure that one out.
You have to be
That I'm not
inspired
smart
by
enough.
the
Thank
game.
you. I appreciate that. I agree. You are not smart enough.
No. Agree that you have to be inspired by the games. What I meant.
Yeah, and it just has to come out for me from I want to play this game more than I can because I don't have enough friends in my life. Like I want to get it out there more and more. And I will say the only good thing I think to come out of the pandemic is a much more of a rise in good solo modes being added to games.
Mhm.
Like when you go to Kickstarter, there used to be a lot of solo modes that were very clearly half baked or just thrown in to get Martin to back it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know Mark Dainty from Not Board Gaming. He talks
Mhm.
about the same thing. A lot of times it's just kind of thrown in there to get the solo gamers to buy it, and it's hot garbage. But more and more than they feel like they are good. I mean, David Turtsey's always making stuff. Drake Villarreal, who does the Merchant's Cove one, does very good solo modes, and they're a lot busier nowadays, and they're doing a lot more, which I think is fantastic. Then along with that, also everyone now, they got to have it up on Tabletop Simulator, Tabletopia. Which, say what you want about playing those, it's not nearly as fun, but it's allowing us, to actually play with each other. So those are the two good things that kind of just come out of this. But mostly for you guys probably got a lot more stuff to talk about lately.
Yeah, I mean, we had Drake on the show a few episodes back, and one of the things he mentioned, which was very interesting to me, was that solo modes are all becoming, like you said, busier and a lot more interesting and a lot more like interactive, but also a lot easier to operate, which is good news for me, right? Because um, like I said, famously bad with rules and whatever. So the easier it is to operate a solo mode, the better. And which is why I've enjoyed games like Dune Imperium or Lost Ruins of Arnak, because they are AI decks, right? And it's like, well, what is the solo AI going to do on its turn? Flip the card, read what's on the card with the icons, and then do that. And that is great for me. And Drake was saying that a lot of modes are going that way. David Turkcey's, kind of in the opposite direction, which he gives a lot of the time. He gives you a big kind of decision tree. It's like, if this, then that, if this, and then that, which takes a little while to kind of grok. But then once you have your head wrapped around it, it seems very intuitive. So, yeah, all of which to say that I too am encouraged by these solo modes that are coming out that are deeper and more fun, but also easier to operate like that.
Any thoughts, Michael? Or
No, I mean, at heart, I'm kind of biased against multiplayer games that have a solo mode on them, just because like I said earlier, I played multiplayer games solo for so long. I've just got so used to it that I was able to effectively, I don't know what the word is. Funny, used to be a technical writer. I can't remember what the word is.
just kind of split your brain and just kind of actually play
right,
both sides.
Focus on the lane I need to be in order to play this side, and then like Axis and Allies, for instance. I don't know if you know what that is, but if I play the British, I need to play them the best way for them, and the Germans, I need to play the best way for them, and etc. And that makes for a really good experience. And a lot of games that we see now, and we talk about this sometimes, for me, sometimes it feels like the solo mode's just kind of tacked on, and you kind of mentioned that a second ago, as an afterthought, because of wanting to have that appeal for solo gamers and being hot garbage, as you said. I find it that way a lot. And if it's a solo game that's got multiplayer as a possibility, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But multiplayer with a solo mode tacked on, I don't really like that kind of thing. Co-op games, I think, are pretty good, just because, generally speaking, you're all going for the same goal, so you can play all the roles. Speaking of the board game that we have for the topic today. Yeah, so that's, yeah.
I actually have a follow-up question for Michael, if I may be allowed,
Yeah.
sir, to interlocute. Michael, when you are playing both sides in a multiplayer game, do you find yourself identifying as one side is me versus the other, is you versus the other? And if so, then how do you resolve situations where you're playing the other side, but you have the knowledge of your side, and then you have to pretend that you don't know that knowledge so that you don't make a decision that favors you, quote unquote? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, some games have hidden information to them, and to me, that's impossible to play solo unless you're just trying to learn the game and you want to play it just so you get it down, so you can play with other people. So the whole, I'll probably have to chop some of this out because I'm kind of blabbing now.
No, blab away.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Martin. What was the question again? Something pop up on my phone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's actually are you able to? How are you able to kind of not?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Cheat,
yeah, right.
cheat against yourself, because you are the British, and even though you're also playing the others.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah. So it's just a matter. See, I look at it like a story sometimes, and in fact, any board games I buy, I tend to think of them in terms of, okay, would this make a good story for an AAR or an after action report? Say a playthrough, doing an article on that, or videos more rarely. I don't really do those a lot. I do more writing than I do video taking. I try to think in terms of that. So if I think that the British are going to do one thing, what would the Germans do in reaction? I mean, some games are more simpler, like Axis and Allies. It's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of choices to make when you think about it. It's a good way to think of different strategies and try new things that might surprise you, even when you're playing it off the cuff, like different sides. It's like, well, I'm going to do this as the Japanese now. What are the Americans going to do? Oh, that's interesting. What do I do now? Kind of a thing. So I just kind of push that aside, if that makes sense, and I just focus on the situation for that player or that side and play it to the best of my ability, and try to think of it, like I said, in terms of a narrative or a story, as to this is what happens now. What's the next step? It's going to be the next player's turn. They're going to do their thing too. I don't know if I'm making sense or not. It's more, yeah, I'm just really good at being able to divide my thought process up into different players. But again,
Yep.
I don't play a lot of those games anymore. I had a few. I've gotten rid of quite a few of them in the last few months, actually. But most of what I have here now are solo or co-op type games, and it's very easy to, of course, play by yourself that way. And even then, the narrative comes out in the solo experience, because I think in terms of the other side and what they're doing, and it kind of writes itself as almost like a history in my head.
Yeah, and I've actually, I mean, it's a skill. It's a skill to be able to do that. I've actually gotten pretty good at doing that also. And one of my other jobs, I'm also a stage actor, and in the theater or performance, we call it, being in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in the moment. And so when I'm playing, if I'm playing two or sometimes three different hands, that's in a competitive game, it becomes we'll stay in this moment. This is what I have. What am I trying to do? What is the best reaction I can make in this moment? And I do a very good job of forgetting what the cards are that I've just looked at. Like, even though I'm just playing myself, I do a very good job of forgetting what's in my hand. So it's kind of able to go through like that. I mean, there are definitely times when it's like, well, I know that I'm influencing because I know what everything is around the board. But it's one of those things, if you're kind of honest with yourself, like, like, why are you doing this? If you're doing it so you can win, well, then you are going to win. But if you're
Right.
doing it to kind of experience the game, to kind of figure out how it works, like you're trying to teach somebody, or gosh, I just really wish I could play this with three. Then if you can keep honest about that, then it works pretty well. It also helps that I've gotten to the point where I don't care too much if I win most games anymore, especially when it's. I mean, sometimes you get you're like a dog with a well, I say with a bone. My dog didn't care about bones. Dog with a treat, right? Sometimes, but for the most part, yeah, okay, I lost. It's just the fun of playing the game, because
Right.
that's the challenge. And it's
Right.
always, to me, so often, if Martin comes through and he makes a great play at the end, that's awesome that he did that, and I will hate him forever that he did that. He won at the end, but it was pretty impressive.
Right. It's certain when you're writing a narrative in your own head that you want it to go a certain way. I mean, you've got biases yourself to a certain story. You want the good guys to win. You want this to happen. This kind of thing, and it's the way you do it. And it's funny you mention acting, because I do that too, and Martin has done that as well. Stage stuff. I've actually got a movie on Amazon Prime right now, which I do not recommend. So don't go looking for it. It's well, I shouldn't say that. If the director ever heard me say that, he'd probably get mad. Anyway, we're not talking about movies. But as an actor, you're able to do that. You can put yourself into that character. That's a really good point that you made, and I didn't even think of that. The last show I was in was just a year and a half ago, Arsenic and Old Lace, and I played two characters. So I had to do that. That split personality thing. I've got one guy I'm totally playing one way, and another guy I'm totally playing the other way, and it's just kind of natural at a certain point. So
You guys, we're all educators and we're all actors. I mean,
acting.
So one of the things which kept me away from fan made stuff for a very long time, is there is a bit of a negative connotation to it, kind of like with fan fiction, because a lot of it's not good. Like, there's a lot of just not good. Like, well, Martin, you were talking about, and you didn't actually talk about it a lot, but in the notes you put, you made a solo mode for a War of the Worlds game that you said is just garbage.
yeah,
But
it's horrible.
but I don't know if it's on BGG, but it could be on BGG.
It's there.
Yeah, see, it's still there. Like, it's not good, but you're just gonna leave it there. You're gonna leave it there. So, how do you guys think publishers and designers should react to fan made stuff? Because there's kind of a line of saying, "Oh, everybody, this is there's fan-made stuff. Go check it out because it might not be balanced. It might not work. It There's all these things in there. So it's kind of a I want to say a slippery slope of do because if you start promoting one thing, does that mean you need to also start promoting other people's? So now are you just how does that work? And what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so yeah, I do have some thoughts on that. So first of all, like anything, there are people with a track record. So, for example, Mark Outen, a friend of ours from the Solo Board Gamers group, well, just the solo gaming community. Um, he is at Duke Fan Blue on Board Game Geek, and he has made some really really good solo AIs for some games. So, for example, there's a game that I like called Parks, which is a very light worker placement game with a very kind of restful, calming, kind of national park theme, and it has an onboard solo mode, which is a beat your own score, which is okay. But then I tried. Mark just devised this Ranger Ron Automa with a personality and a deck and extra components that you have to print out, and it just blows the onboard the built-in solo beat your own score solo out of the water. And so I that was my first experience with this stuff. And so then he made one for another game called Fun Fair, which is a light tableau builder in a amusement park theme. And again, his Automa is good. So it's like anything. It's like you have favorite authors and you have favorite directors and you have favorite actors. You also start to develop favorite makers of fan-made Automa, and then when they do something new, you pay attention. Another one I'll mention is the guy called the Mountain Gamer. So he's not a hungry gamer, he's a mountain gamer, because I think he lives in the mountains. His name is Steve Leonard, and he actually doesn't really document his solo modes. He just makes videos on them and then teaches you through the video. And so he made one for one of my favorite deck building games called Arctic Scavengers, which famously has a horrible solo mode. And by the way, most multiplayer designers should not even try to make solo modes because they aren't committed to solo games and they're not good at it. So Steve Leonard takes, hey, he likes Arctic Scavengers too. So, and it's not a very well-known game. So I'm like, okay, that's one point of he and I are aligned, and he makes a solo mode, and it's a great one, in my opinion. So those types of things, right? Those are my thoughts on that. Where if you're a publisher, if you're someone out there, get into the world, know who the players are, try their stuff, see if you like it, and then if you do, then give them a shot and listen to them the next time they put something out there.
I think it's good and important to have that kind of support from the board gaming public. You should encourage it, as long as people aren't making money off of it, as long as they're not creating bootleg versions of your games and selling them, which I hear horror stories occasionally happen. But for the most part, I rarely hear that kind of thing. So I think it's great that Board Game Geek actually encourages that. And it's even better when a publisher gets behind that kind of thing, gets really excited, and also even promotes that kind of material once in a while. So I think that's encouraging to people with creative minds to be able to do things like that.
I think it's a tougher situation for a publisher than I think most of us realize, because you don't want to alienate a community. And so, for example, well, like I said, I don't like the solo for that exists for Coloma. I just don't like it. And then but I suspect a lot of people do. So if that was a fan made solo that's out there, and all these people think it's great, and I'm as a publisher, if I don't think it's the game. I don't think it works. And now I'm saying, don't like it. I have to respond because everyone's clamoring about this solo mode. So I have to respond to this. We don't think it works, which maybe you have to start responding if, you've been praising the Martin G solo mode for your War of the Worlds game, and you put it out there how great this is, and it's how games should be done. Are you then kind of opening up yourself for people to say, well, oh, you're looking at this, well, you got to see this one too? And then that becomes an added workload, because then you got to either you're just going to say, oh yeah, check it out solo mode, see if you like it. In which case, what if that's someone's first experience with the game is your War of the Worlds solo mode? They might never want to play that game again. So I think there's more to it than, and I hadn't thought about it until just you guys talking about it right now. I think perhaps there's more to it than we think about, which is probably why more publishers aren't talking about solo modes that are being made and promoting them and pushing them out there, beyond probably just being happy that people are making them and there's a place like BGG where they exist, because that's going to get people checking stuff out. Because as long as it's not an official mode, it's not a commentary on their game. And if they are tweeting about it or whatever, even though it's not an official mode, it's getting kind of their stamp of approval, which kind of, we know how much we don't actually read things that we see, you know. So I don't know. It's a kind of an interesting thought. I hope anybody
It
watching,
is.
listening, drop us some comments on what you think about that.
Yeah, and so one of my favorite episodes of the previous incarnation of Solosaurus was when Brendan and Carter talked about Root, which is a game that I haven't played actually, and I don't own. Uh, but it was a fascinating episode to me because they were talking about Root, designed by Cole Worley, I believe is the brothers, right? The Whirligig outfit, and
I think
that
it's just Cole for Root. I think.
is a Cole, and he had devised a solo mode called the Mechanical Marquise, right? Which was okay, but then a fan made solo mode called
Better Bot Project.
the Better Bot Project, right? Which I think it's kind of like an open source project where a lot of folks were involved, and kind of like Linux, maybe for solo modes. Eventually, they adopted the Better Bot as the official solo mode, and so there was a kind of like one of the few instances where the publisher recognized and the designer recognized they've done a better job than we have, and we should take that work and incorporate it. And it's also not coincidentally, I think, why one of the reasons why there is such a great fan relationship between Cole Whirligig, and the fans of their games, because they listen. Whereas, and then kind of connected to a thing we were talking about earlier, which is a lot of the times these Kickstarters go on, and it's like it's good, it supports 1 to 4 players, 1 to 5 players, and then, oh, by the way, the solo mode is to come. Oh, which is already the first red flag. It's like, oh, you weren't considering it from the get-go, from the jump, then I'm already, a little bit skeptical. And it's that, I'll relate that to yet another thing, which is, maybe the pandemic is bringing it to the foreground, but in general, solo modes have been an afterthought. And the designing the multiplayer game and the multiplayer audience is historically, much more prominent, much bigger, and so on and so forth. So I just think that it's part of the current trend where there's more focus being placed on the solo gaming community, and now there's more necessity for solo gaming to happen. And so I hope that there's also more focus and emphasis being placed on better quality solo modes, what makes a better solo mode. And I hope that publishers and designers are more willing to listen, like Cole Worley.
Yeah, I think the way that whole Root thing went, it happened, I think it's just fantastic. And they brought the guy on, I think, to help develop new ones too. I think I'm not totally sure. And I mean, it's funny. Like I just imagine, like how many people is that now the dream? Like, I'm making a solo mode. They're gonna take it. They're gonna bring me on. Then I'm gonna be the next big thing. Like even to the point, like I talk about, I'm working on this Coloma one. I do actually have it in the hands of the designer because he's a buddy of mine now. And it could just, if they do another printing, maybe they put it. It's just not why I did it. Like I did it because I like the game, but like in my head, like, well, wait a minute. It happened for the Better Bot Project. And wait a minute. Lucky Duck approved of my other one. Wait a minute. Maybe this is my calling. It's not.
Don't cut yourself out, buddy.
Yeah, well, I think about it because the Root is a fun game. I actually prefer Vast to Root. The Vast Mysterious Manor specifically. It's just more my style. It's more condensed. It feels a little faster. You're controlling a character, or maybe if you're the skeletons, 5 different skeletons that are running around. And I keep thinking about that one. Like, gosh, I wish I could come up with a better bot project for that. But then I think about it, and just the amount of complexity in those games, and the amount of inspiration. I have no idea who came with a Better Bot project. I wish I knew his or her name. That went into figuring out a way to make this work is amazing. Like the ones I did, it involves rolling a couple dice. Like you roll a few dice, and the thing happens, and it tells you what happens, and there's like 4 bullet points on a couple. It says, well, you do this, this can't be done. You do this, that's it. But these things are just pages of stuff to go and take this amazingly complex game and create basically another person out there playing against, which to me is that's my favorite kind of solo mode, the one that I can also put it in a game of, with 2 of us or 3 of us, and now we have a 3 or 4 player game. To me, that's the best kind of solo mode for me, because
Agreed.
I play a lot of games with other people also, and I actually do competitive games and stuff, which most of my reviewer friends, they're like one stop co-op shop and only solo stuff, and I'll be talking about, oh, this game is great, like what is it? I'll tell them, oh, that's competitive, we don't care about that. I'm like, well, you just go away. But so for me, I think that's what's the most exciting, and I think the way that, to kind of wrap around to what we're talking about, fan made content, that's what's exciting about it for me, and it's changing my own perception of fan made content, because there are things like the Better Bot Project. There are, well, like Ricky Royal did a good solo mode for Cosmic Frog, which is an amazing game. You have to play it sometime. It's not as good solo, but it works. It's enjoyable solo. That's a game that's all about having a lot of people and a lot of chaos. But great game. But I will now, if I have to pick up another game and I see he has a solo, I will download it and I will try it. Because those things are out there, and it's not all garbage fanfic that you have out
Right.
there. Which I think is also part of the kind of the growth of the industry that you were talking about. There's more and more people doing solo. Like us nerds are smart sometimes, and we can make good stuff, which I think is delightful. Now we've talked all about all this stuff to get to what we're really here for, and we chased Michael away from talking about Heroes of Tenefyr. And everybody, I'm moving from earlier. Right now, you can hear what Michael's kind of thoughts on it, where it'll just kind of be popped in there. So if it's an odd cut, that's why. And we all know the real reason Michael left was because Martin didn't actually send him the game until the last second, and he waited, and the game showed up last night for Michael, and he had to play it all night long to maybe be able to talk about this, because Martin's had it for like 6 weeks, and then he finally sent it. But what is Heroes of Tenefyr? Give us a quick rundown.
So Heroes of Tenefyr is a cooperative or soloable deck building game with a fantasy theme. And essentially, you pull together your party of adventurers. I believe in the base box, you have 4 options. You've got the thief, the cleric, the barbarian, and the I'm missing one. Thief, cleric, barbarian, and one other kind of heroic archetype.
Is it just a war? I don't. Hold on, I got the box right here behind me.
Anyway, you've got these kind of Dungeons and Dragons-y character archetypes, very simple ones. And you each start with the same
bard.
The bard, there you go. Of course I would forget the bard, because nobody ever wants to play the bard. And you each start with your own, essentially the same deck of low-level cards, and then one kind of special ability card, which kind of defines you as the character, the only thing that you can do. And then what's cool about it is, for setup, the dungeons and the monsters are separated into levels. So there's a level 1 dungeon, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and then there's a selection of different bosses, and you choose one for each game, and then you kind of set that aside for later on, if you ever get there. Well, actually, you will get there, but will you be powerful enough to take them on? That's kind of like the big question mark there.
Probably not.
Probably not. You always lose. And then the other cool thing about this game and setup is you give yourself 2 different dungeon choices per level, and then you flip the top card over, and then based on that, you're like, you now get to choose like which one to go into, and it's like, well, should I do that or that? So yeah, so that's basically it. And then every turn, each character will draw a hand of 3 cards. It's always 3 cards, And then the other cool thing about this game, and by the way, I really have to thank you for introducing it to me. It was at your urging, because I've known about this game for a really long time. Like the designer had shown up in the print and play community before it was even a thing, and he's like, "Hey, you want to try out my game?" And I didn't, which is weird. So it's kind of like a
I think that's the only game that's ever existed. That I have a print and play. Anybody willing to try it? That you're like, nah.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Years literally, but it's kind of a weird coming back around for me. But what's the other cool thing, just to finish the thought, is when you get your hand of 3 cards and you're looking at the monster and you're looking at the amount of damage you need to be able to do to defeat that monster. You have a choice of, do I keep this hand, in which case I have to play it, or do I discard it and then draw another hand of 3? And so I love just like the tension there and the push your luck element, where it's like, okay, yeah, because I didn't get a hand of 3 cards, so I'll discard those, and then I'll draw. But in doing so, you are now diminishing the number of cards in your deck to be able to go in deeper into the rest of the dungeon. So I love that kind of game design where there's so much player agency, but there's also like really tough consequences to deal for your decisions, which is, to me, the essence of great game design. Is there always have to be tough choices, and don't go easy on your players. Give them consequences they need to deal with. Gosh darn it! So
and
a
the
lot of
challenge
these
that,
newer
that
games,
happens
yeah,
with the reducing of your deck, for the people watching, listening, you haven't played it, is each dungeon has 4 monsters in it. And if you get to the bottom of it, you get a reward. In addition to that, every time you beat a monster, that monster goes into your deck, and you spin the card around, and it improves your deck. So you don't buy cards, you kill things and absorb their power. I guess very, very creepy. But every time you fail to win because you've run out of cards, the boss gets 2 steps closer to you. But if you just
right,
leave the dungeon on your own, you're like, I'm gonna go take a nap now, it only comes 1 step closer. But then, of
yeah,
course, you're gonna have to go back into that dungeon to defeat it. So that everything about the game is push your luck style. And the only thing that I want to call out is it does come with a solo mode in the game itself. There's 2 ways to do it. You can just play multi-handed, like you're playing with other people, or you can put 2 heroes together into one uber hero, which I love playing
hmm
that way,
hmm
because then you're the barbarian bard, or whatever well, actually I like a barbarian, but that's actually a good combination. Whatever it may be, and then you always act as both of them, and you only have one big thick deck. But of course, there's a consequence to that, like you were talking about, because a lot of the abilities that you get for defeating a dungeon will allow you to give cards to another player, or cull certain cards from your deck, and now suddenly those aren't as useful because there is no other player. There is no other deck that you're messing around with. And the kind of the last
right,
thing so people can understand is, as you're defeating monsters, some monsters, their ability that they give you is better for certain characters. If you are the barbarian and you've killed an orc, there aren't any orcs in the game, but and you've killed whatever it is, if you get that in your deck, it will be a better card moving on. And
yeah.
did you have a chance to try out the expansion or no?
No, sadly, I did not. And I wanted to ask you, what does the expansion add? Because this game design feels so tight and so well put together and so compact. So I was just wondering, what did the expansion just give you? More character classes?
Yeah, so the
You know,
expansion gives you some more bosses,
hmm
more classes, and a significant amount of the cards that are specific monsters, depending on what classes you're playing with. So you have more options of those to put in there, and I think it's 4 new characters. All of them are just one step a little more complicated,
hmm
where one of them is the cyber mage or something like that, and you're playing cards that are allowed to take these little gear tokens, or whatever it is that you're say, it's like a steampunk thing, I don't know, and you're
okay,
allowed to take those onto your card, and then you can use those at times to power up certain cards that you might draw. So there's a little bit more complicated. There's one that has a wolf that runs around with you, and all of them are great fun. They work well with the old ones, but really what makes it work is it's all the extra cards that vary up the dungeons. And
Mhm.
so no, because to me that's a lot of fun if you're playing with your the thief and the ranger. Well, knowing that in those stacks our cards are specifically going to power you up makes you really want to go in there. And it kind of defeats what to me was the weakest part of the original game is you play it enough and then you've kind of seen everything. And you can kind of
Right.
start predicting what's going to come out. And it's much harder to do with the expansion. I think the expansion is getting that and adding that is the absolute the way to go. It really makes it fun. This was my number four game of the year last year with
Yeah.
the expansion in there. I think it just because it's so quick, it's great. But
Yeah.
so get that expansion, print that, and then also I guess print again the base game because you sent it away.
Or just buy it. Got another browser tab here. I mean, I've already purchased half a dozen games, and
Good, good. Well,
to this point.
and I do. I really, I recommend this one to a lot of people, especially. I compare it to One Deck Dungeon. I don't know if you've played that.
Mhm. Oh yeah, absolutely, love it.
Which is another very good game, but it kind of depends on. And I also strongly recommend One Deck Dungeon. It's kind of a question of what's more interesting to you: push your luck
Mhm.
or a dice placement puzzle. So for my wife, it's the dice placement puzzle. My wife is a savant at One Deck Dungeon. I mean, we'll roll stuff, and I'll say, well, I guess we're it's over. She's like, no, you be quiet, stop that, and she'll solve it. But for me, push your luck. Much more interesting, quick. So it's kind of what's more interesting to you. As I think where I kind of fall down on that. I also every people are sick of me. Every review I've done lately, and when I talk about art that I like, there's something so whimsical about the art in
Yeah.
Heroes of Tenefyr.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
you're absolutely right. It reminds me of my days playing basic Dungeons and Dragons. So we go back to like the days of the '80s and
yeah,
first ed,
what's your
second ed.
Thaco? What's your Thaco?
Was my Thaco? Yeah, I hated that. It's like I was told there would not be any math.
Oh, well, that is the biggest lie ever perpetuated in the world. Is oh no, it's just a game. There's no math. There is more math in role playing
It's
games than
so mathy.
anything in the world. I was doing some role playing game stuff for a while, and then I found that there was fantasy adventure dungeon crawl games and board games. And I was like, well, I'm done with that. But I remember that there was a system. I want to say it's called like Dungeon World or something like that, where everything truly there was like no math. The most math you ever had to do was add 3 or 4 to a number, and it was the greatest thing I'd ever played. So this is great. It's so fast. It's so easy. But sorry,
But
you were talking about the whimsicality
yeah,
of
the
the art.
art style reminds me of those old illustrations, and I forget the names of the artists. But like accompanying those old kind of like the red, AD&D second ed book or whatever. It's got that same kind of feel. Or if you're familiar with the games of Jason Glover, so I'm thinking about Desolate or Iron Helm or Gate. He does all of his own art, and it's all kind of throwback style to that era, which is I love, because it gives that whole nostalgic feel of like being a nerd growing up in the '80s and playing Dungeons and Dragons and pushing your spectacles up the bridge of your nose and all that stuff. But yeah, so I love the art style, and I will say this: I have been on a quest, on a mythical quest, if you will, for a great fantasy themed deck building game, because I love deck building games. I love all the stripe of deck building games. And this, I will say, Heroes of Tenefyr is not a traditional deck building game in that sense, which is probably one of its strengths,
Yeah.
and also accounts for one of the reasons why I hadn't tried it for the longest time, because it wasn't a traditional deck building game. So when you think of like fantasy deck building games, you think of your Thunderstone Quest. You think of your what's the one with the dragons, Draconis Invasion, and all this other stuff. And none of them are really any very good. They're okay or mediocre. Actually, in the case of original Thunderstone, it's boring as crap. I mean, it is. With all the I don't know if you've ever played Thunderstone. It's like, and you go in the dungeon, and then now you have to calculate the darkness and light and it's all like, advanced hieroglyphics. I don't know. So then when I started playing this at your request, it was fast and it was fun and it was, just it kept the tension up the whole way through. And like a great game design, the difficulty would increase to match with, as you built up your deck and your character's powers increased as well, and you lost 0 cards from your deck, you know what I mean, like worthless cards. So yeah, I'm like, why aren't more people raving about, like, because you hear this sometimes on like the board game groups. It's like, there's no good fantasy themed deck builder, but there is. This is one of them.
And I always say, talk about this, there's another one out there that I think is, if I ever do a list of most underrated games in my mind, that this will be in the top 3. It's called Battle for Greyport.
Oh, I have not played that
Same people who did the Red Dragon Inn, which I adore. Red Dragon Inn is a pure take that, mean as a game can be. Makes me very happy. It makes me very happy because of the world they created with the characters. The characters are fun, they're funny. But it's the same characters, but it's a deck building style game, cooperative deck building, and it uses dice. So you have your character with some cards, and then the deck building is you use every turn you have set amount of money, and it's like a three round game. In each turn you have your copper, silver, and gold coins, whatever. And you prescriptively what you're going to have to spend every turn, and it has weapons and characters that you can recruit to come with you. So you build it that way. So that's somewhat traditional deck building style, where you're going to spend stuff to buy stuff, except it removes the whole you have to buy money cards. You know what I'm talking about? You got to buy a bunch of money cards so you can get which for me is the least interesting part about traditional deck building for me. I know a lot of people love it. So what you can buy. There's 8 things out there that you can buy each turn. You know what's there, and then you use that, and you're building up this troop that's going around fighting monsters that are out in these different locations. And you play a character. Each character can play a weapon, and that tells you what kind of dice you get to roll to fight the monster. And it's hard as can be, but yet that one you can get relatively inexpensively because it wasn't hugely successful. But that's another one that takes deck building, flips it on its head a little bit, and has that fantasy vibe to it. So you should try that one out too, or go get all your shots, and I'll let you play it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I'm with you. The reason why I like it so much is it takes out all the work of the building of the deck and makes it exciting to me. It's always exciting to get a new card because you're going to fight the Minotaur or the Sphinx or whatever it is that you're fighting. And especially when you know what's in the dungeon, you can see what's coming next, and it's a great card. But you got to make that choice of, I might not be able to kill this thing, but God, I really want it. I really want that thing. So it's always exciting. And then I don't know if it's in the base game, but some of the bosses just make me laugh. There's one boss, I think it comes to the expansion, thousands of goblins. That's the boss. And it just, instead of 4 cards, it's like 8 cards. And each one it goes through, and it's just all these goblins everywhere. And it helps build that kind of that narrative as you're thinking, well, goblins aren't a threat. If we've watched movies or whatever it is, or we've played video games, and the goblins come and you just like slaughter them. But so the boss it's thousands of goblins, and it just
Great.
it makes me laugh. And each of the bosses are no joke hard.
Right.
I think for me, even when I've felt like I've crushed it and I've built up, I haven't lost a single round. I've always, doing great. Luck's with me. I still sometimes lose because they're just really challenging. And which will bring me to kind of my one complaint that I have as I've gone back playing it is there are definitely times when you can get to the end and you are not going to win.
Yep,
which
that's true.
Can be kind of a bummer. As you're playing, it's like, well, should I just stop now? Because I lost 6 times on the way here.
Well, it's kind of like as a longtime like Call of Cthulhu, H.P. Lovecraft gamer, there's a sense in which like the whole kind of final Fantasy Flight, Arkham Files, how they have diluted the complete existential hopelessness of actually fighting against the old ones, and the idea of actually winning. I mean, that's not a thing. And Chaosium, when you were playing, like when I was playing back we understood that you could go and spend months and do this campaign and realize that at the end of it, the only things that lie in your future are insanity, death, or worse. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, well, there's absolutely no chance. We've built up and we've gotten to the boss, but we're going to soldier on, by gum, and we're going to go valiantly to our deaths, because that's what we do. And there's a certain nobility, stupid nobility in that.
because what if it goes right?
Because what if?
Like,
one in a million chance.
What if you throw your rock at the dragon and it happens to hit it in the eye, and that makes it rear up and hit its head on the stalactite or stalagmite, whichever one comes down.
Whichever one comes down, who knows?
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's funny talking about the Cthulhu. I'm not a huge Cthulhu guy. I've played Call of Cthulhu a couple times. I have some friends who are just really deep into it. And years ago, first time I ever played this game was at a local convention, local to you and I. Small one, the Pacificon or Celesticon or one of those. And my buddy was running a game of Cthulhu. He was going to run a game. He had this compliment. Like, okay, so I'm going to play. And I'm kind of muddling through this thing, not really know what's going on. And people are doing what they're doing. I'm being a goober. And we find some book. We find a book, like, bound in skin or something. And I said, let's burn it. Let's just burn it. Like,
let's burn it. Don't even try to read it.
Burn the book. And I was like, no, we can't do that. We need this. And I got outvoted. And every so often I was like, can we burn the book now? No, we can't do that. And then, of course, the portal opens because of the book and the thing, and people are dying. And we're on like a ship somewhere, like with a nuclear reactor. And the only way we survived is like they set off the nuclear reactor and blew it all up.
All right.
And at the end, and I died horribly. I did.
Of course.
And at the end, I was like, my buddy Richard, I was like, so Richard, just out of curiosity, if we burned the book, what would have happened? He's like, I guess you won. I guess you would have won if you burned the book, because that they couldn't do the ritual without the book.
It would have been a lot less interesting, but you would have won.
Yeah, right. And so, but what I learned is, if you're playing Cthulhu, burn all the books.
Burn all the books. Absolutely.
A couple of years later, played a game just on like Roll20 or something, and so I made a character whose name was Bernie McBurnface, and that's all he did. Anything papery, I just burned it. He also died horribly, but he did not summon any demons. Is what I'm getting at. Anyhow, I feel like we've now wrapped all of it up. Clearly, both of us are pretty high on Heroes of Tenefyr, which everyone who knows me knows that. But now, future hungry gamer here. This is where I'm dropping in Michael's thoughts on Heroes of Tenefyr. Like I said, super awkward cut, and there'll be another awkward cut coming back out of it. So enjoy that.
I can tell you in 2 minutes, it's one of the best deck building games I've played. I haven't played very many, as Martin will tell you about. I enjoyed the process of putting it through its paces last night. And Martin, again, I appreciate you sending that to me.
No problem.
It's going to be a good addition to my collection here.
Martin G and Michael have said it's good too. So,
I mean, I will say this. I know Michael's not here, but he didn't like Warp's Edge, which is a asterisk building game. It's not a deck builder, but it's a
bag builder.
A bag builder. There you go. Yeah. And every other time that we've either reviewed or talked about any kind of game with that mechanism, he's not about it. And so for him to have positive things to say about a deck building game is huge from my perspective. So great suggestion for him as well, and it really speaks to how, as you said, this game kind of changes up the formula in smart ways. Which another one of my kind of famously, my favorite deck building game is called Aeon's End. Which is kind of like the 800-pound gorilla of deck building
I'm shaking
games.
my head. I'm shaking my head for you if you're just listening so hard.
But one of the things that I think makes Aeon's End so good is that Kevin Riley, the designer, really analyzed what were the weaknesses of deck building games that had come before it, and then he actually made design choices in his to address those. And one of them is, if you're playing a traditional deck building game, you kind of can't get around the fact that when you're starting out, it's boring, and because you can't do anything because your deck isn't built up yet. It's kind of part and parcel of the design. But Heroes of Tenefyr and Aeon's End kind of address this. Well, they take different ways to address it, and I'm obviously not going to go deep into how Aeon's End addresses it. But like I said, Heroes of Tenefyr addresses this by giving you splitting it up into dungeons with monsters that are appropriate for where your deck is, how built up your deck is at that point, and it's constantly pushing you to kind of like, I got to build up more, or make seemingly crazy choices, like, I just finished a level 1 dungeon. Normally I should go to level 2, but maybe I'll go to level 3 and see how that works out, because that card on top there is showing me that I might have a chance. So those kinds of things, and the fact that it's all up to you. There's a lot of, there's a generous amount of player agency here, and it doesn't kind of like lock you into, you just finished level 1, now you have to do level 2, obviously. So
Yeah, that push your luck just is everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to go to level 4? Go for it.
Yeah.
You do you, boo. You do you.
And there's consequences for doing that, but that's good too. Yeah. So I can't say enough good things about this
There's
game
a level
design.
of hope to it. Is now I'm thinking about it. Like you always have that hope.
Yeah.
I might be able to do that. Which, and I hadn't put that in, but that's what makes it exciting to me, is that maybe I could, because it gives you just enough information and
Right.
you have enough information about what's in your deck to know if things go right, this is possible. But
Yeah.
you're mentioning also Aeon's End, and I'm curious what it is about the Aeon's End that has you thinking along the same line. So go ahead.
Oh, so Aeon's End gives you more ways to build up than just, buying cards, right? You've also got each character's unique ability, and you can just, if you choose to on your turn, you can spend your ether. I think it's called ether is the currency in that game. And build up your ability, and then if you get enough tokens, depending on which character you're playing, then you can fire it off. You know what I mean? The fact that the monster's deck, the nemesis deck is arranged in order from here are the weaker ones, and then you got the middle ones, and then you got it does a little bit of that as well, kind of matching the challenge level to where your deck is probably going to be built up to at that stage in the game. I liken the experience of playing Aeon's End to riding a good roller coaster, not one of those dangerous ones. But like going to a name brand theme park and going to the Great American Scream Machine, and you're looking at
Hold
it.
up.
I know.
What is your life that you've been going places to like offshoot backyard roller coasters?
I lived in New Jersey. Have you heard of Action Park? Oh, well, look it up. There's a great documentary on Action Park on Netflix back in the 80s. It was a very, very actually legitimately dangerous theme park. People actually got hurt. I mean, like every week people were getting hurt, and there was a very lax kind of devotion to safety. So but people who lived through that experience, they're like, yeah, man, we went through that and you didn't. Like you got to your safe Disney or Universal or Six Flags parks, and we actually had an element of danger that you never had anyway. So So Eon's End is the Great American Screen Machine. There's 7 loops. It's gonna be that, but it's reliable. It's predictable. You know what the experience, and you know it's reliably going to take 45 minutes to play, and you're going to have a roller coaster, ton of fun. That's how I think about like the experience of playing Eon's End. At least the only boxes I have, which is the second edition box and the War Eternal, the earlier stuff. Back when it was still cool. Not when now, of course, there's like 20 different boxes of Aeon's End, and people are like, "Where do I jump into? And how do I?" And I'm like, "I don't know," because
Yeah,
so
I've played it a few times, and I got the app, and that's a solid app version of it. Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
it just to me is fine. It's fine, and I think it's because it's got the core deck build to it of you're going to get your crystals, which is going to allow you to buy something from the market, and the market is out there, and it's always the same market. And I think to me, I've learned that I just don't find that exciting.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fine.
which I think it was why I like Tenefyr, and it's why I also like the Greyport, because it's Greyport. You have 4 weapons, you have 4 characters out there that you can buy, and you buy one, you flip a new card, and it's going to be something different.
Right.
And so, well, that comes back. I always talk about how much I like chaos in my games.
Yeah.
I love me some chaos. Cosmic Frog is one of my new favorite things because it is pure chaos. I mean, well, I
Yeah.
mean, you look at the art. You look at the art on that game. Go ahead as I babble and pull up the art on Cosmic Frog.
Oh, I've seen it. It's pretty psychedelic.
and that's what you get. I mean, crazy.
Is it related to Dungeon Degenerates at all? Because that's another game with
No,
crazy
not at all.
art. Yeah.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I like the art on Cosmic Frog. I do not like the art on Dungeons Degenerates.
Yeah.
But now we've gone way, way off. Ooh, I'm pointing. Madara just got delivered outside my door.
Woohoo!
So I'll be punching stuff for the rest of the day.
How many boxes is that?
It's 1, but it's a 22-pound box.
Oh, well, it's 2 pounds lighter than Gloomhaven. At least there's that.
Yeah, let me tell you, the best thing that ever happened was when we finished Gloomhaven, and I sent the box home with the person who actually owned it. And I think he thought it was going to stay here, and I was like, "Oh, take it away." But anyhow, we've now gone like 2 hours. We were talking about going an hour. Michael abandoned us. We've been babbling forever. Fletcher probably needs to go out. Beatrice has been scratched at the door once or twice and left. But
you're going to have to cut those pictures in of Beatrice and Fletcher, and they have to have a play date at some point.
Well, we should, except what the play date will be for Beatrice is she'll jump up on the chair because she doesn't like dogs.
Oh, yeah.
she thinks she's people.
Yeah.
It's very, very bizarre. There's like 3 dogs that she'll hang out with, kind of. It's kind of like playing a Euro game for her. Multiplayer solitaire. She's okay with that. But if you try to come play with her you're a dog, she's like, ugh. Because I mean, she's a King Charles Cavalier Spaniel, so she's very upper crust.
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely.
I mean, she was bred to be a foot warmer, so she knows what's up. But anyhow, thank you so much for joining us, or joining me. I say us like I'm important for joining me on this one early in the morning. And before we go, do you have any words of gaming wisdom?
I'm all out of wisdom if I ever had any. I want to say thank you very, very much for inviting me. I had a blast. The structure of this show is a lot less restrictive than our usual one. So it's just very refreshing to be able to just go off and talk about all these things. And I think that I've been very fascinated by the things that we've been talking about. I think if there's any wisdom I've acquired in my 3+ years in this is, I'll just echo something that some of the greats, one of the greats have said. So Martin Wallace, right? I adore Australia, one of his designs. He
Yes,
also got
his zombie game.
his
Australia.
zombie game. Absolutely. I'll just go with it. I remember I was asked to submit a video for the Manchester Game Jam last year, pre-COVID, because it was a game competition in the UK run by these great couple of guys, Peter Illingsworth and this other gentleman. And they were like, "Hey, Martin, since you're so into print and play, can you submit a video just like talking to these, like, 5-10 minute video, just giving them tips and tricks on print and play?" So I did. And then after I submitted it, I went and took a look at their website. And in their website, they had apparently asked other people, other luminaries of the game development world to also. And one of like literally my video was right under Martin Wallace's video. And I'm like, what?
And you immediately
So,
went back and demanded top billing?
like, how dare you put that Martin above me? No.
Because
So I
clearly
was just
G comes before W. So if you could fix that.
duh. But anyway, so this is so Martin Wallace. I clicked his video and I watched it. And by the way, I just want to there's absolutely no way or reason in this world that I should ever be mentioned in the same breath as someone who has designed some classic games like Brass and etc. But anyway, it's super relaxed. It's pre-COVID. He's on this backyard on his deck in Australia, and he's just like talking to the camera. Somebody holding up an iPhone. It's like, somebody asked me to tell you what I think about board game design, blah, blah, blah. And he's literally just tossing it off. And which is, I think, the best, right? Like, like I'm so incredible at this and I'm so experienced. I'm just going to talk off that. And so anyway, in other words, not no air of self-importance whatsoever. But what he said was, the first thing he said was, keep things simple, which, he goes, which is, but by saying that, I don't mean that because, obviously he's designed very, very complex games, but he goes, what he means is keep the game as simple as it needs to be and allow the complexity to emerge from the interactions between these simple elements. And that's where the complexity kind of, he goes, it is emergent gameplay. And I think about that all the time. And I try to apply that in everything I do, which is game related, which is, because it just makes a lot of sense to me. It's like, well, if you start out with a design that's whatever, a solo AI or a game design that's way too complicated, got too many ingredients in the pot, then it's just a lot harder to figure out how they're all going to work together. But start with those like simple building blocks and then just trust that, kind of like procedurally by this thing, which has this one characteristic, and you put it in an interaction with this other thing with this different characteristic, and how they're going to logically interact with each other will lead to, more complex interactions. So that's the wisdom, if anything, that I want to leave you with is Martin Wallace's wisdom.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining me today. Everybody, you can find out how to listen to Solosaurus. Just check down in the description, either the video that you're watching or the podcast description. It will be down there. Make sure you, I don't know how you subscribe to a podcast, but subscribe to his podcast. Yeah. You tap on a thing on the screen is apparently how that works.
Apparently.
Yeah. So everyone, as always, thank you so very much for joining us. And if you enjoy the episode, please like, subscribe, share, do all those wonderful things. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you. No, that's the wrong camera. I want this camera.
Yeah, we don't need your OnlyFans camera.
My OnlyFans. Oh my gosh, that's too horrible to contemplate. My daughter just taught me what that meant, last week. I didn't know what that meant.
And now you're contemplating it?
I mean, if I get desperate enough, but that we were talking about that on the last episode of Solosaurus. It's like, if we ever did a Patreon, that would be people paying us to not subscribe to them. So here's another bonus for you not to subscribe is when you subscribe to our Patreon, you also get free access to our OnlyFans.
So there's going to be that one person that's really excited about
it. William Chu on Board Game Spotlight would be the only person. Oh, there we go. Oops. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're very popular with the animals there. So,
Great.
which beast is that behind you?
Yeah, is that Fletcher?
Is there a beast behind me? Yeah, that is Fletcher. He's now almost 11 years old, and he just basically stays away from the three younger pups. Yeah.
That was good because when you said that, he turned. He just looked at us like, "Wait, bud, keep my
Whatever.
name out of your mouth." So why are you shilling for BGG here? What's going on?
Oh,
They
this
paying
was
you for this? They paying
this
you
was
for this?
no. This is a Christmas gift from my kids. Um, they put he Mondo. He's 17. He researched it himself. He was asking me all these questions. He's like, Dad, what are those citizenship stars you have on BGG that you were telling me about? So I explained to him the citizenship stars and how other people have to grant them to you. You don't lobby for them. You just kind of get them for doing things for folks, and folks appreciate you on BGG, whatever. And he's like, why do you have 6 stars? Oh, because whatever. And so he makes me a shirt, and he puts the six citizenship stars. So
That's
that was
very
kind of cool.
now. I just want to call out what's clearly not what actually happened. Dad, why do you have 6 stars? Oh yeah, whatever. That was a 40-minute lecture on why you have 6 stars, wasn't
Right.
it?
Yes. Absolutely.
I mean, just say, well, sit down, son, first. Yeah, I got all this geek gold. I don't know what to do with. I got
You give
tons
it
of it.
away. You give it away. You give
But
it
what
away
if
to other people.
what if I need it? What if the economy collapses around the world and that's all that we use? Like,
What if Geek Gold is the next Dogecoin?